The morning it happened, the fog sat across the water like an old shawl. The lake behind my house is small, just a wide, quiet pocket the river forgot to carry away. On good days it smells like rain and pine and clean mud. On bad days it smells like everything you don't say out loud. I was on the porch with my coffee and my list. I make lists most mornings now. What to thaw? Who to call? Which drawer is hiding the tape measure? Staying busy keeps sorrow from getting ideas. At first I didn't notice the car. People sometimes park on the far side near the old boat ramp. Teenagers who need a place to cry. Men who pretend they're checking on the fish, when really they're checking on their thoughts. But then the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out in a hurry. Like time had tapped her shoulder. Denise. My daughter-in-law moves like music when she wants something. And like a metronome when she's already decided it's hers. Even at a distance I knew the set of her shoulders. She wore a pale coat, hair in a tight bun, and sunglasses. Though the sun hadn't made up its mind yet, she popped her trunk, gripped something with both hands and dragged it out. A suitcase, large, hard-sided, the kind people use for airports and leaving. It thunked onto the gravel with a sound that did not belong to morning. I don't know why I didn't call out. Some part of me believed if I stayed very still, the truth would change into something else. Denise looked around, left, right, behind. She didn't look my way because nobody ever looks at the side of the lake, where the water looks like a mirror. My porch sits in the mirror. She wrestled the suitcase toward the dock, knees bending, back braced. When she reached the edge, she didn't hesitate. She shoved, the splash for the quiet. Ripples ran out like rings on a tree. Denise watched, chest rising fast, until the case stopped bobbing and began to sink. Slow as a bad decision. Then she turned, walked back to her car, and drove away as if she hadn't just tried to drown a piece of the world. My coffee went cold in my hand. I couldn't move. There are moments when life splits into a before and an after. Mine arrived in a beige sedan at 7:18 a.m. I told myself 100 good stories in 30 seconds. Maybe it was old clothes for a donation drive gone wrong. Maybe it was broken things, sharp things, thrown away for safety. Maybe it was nothing. But my body knew better. The hair on my arm stood up like it had a vote. Denise has been married to my son, Marcus. 7 years. She is efficient, polite, allergic to dust and interruptions. She schedules holidays the way other people schedule dentist appointments. She calls me mom in that careful tone that means we are related by paperwork. I have tried to love her the way I love rain that arrives when you're standing in line for groceries. Not what you wanted. Exactly. But good for the world. 2 months ago, Marcus asked if I'd found the deed to the lake property. His daddy left it to me with a note that said, "For your peace." Marcus thought we should put things in one place, by which he meant their place. Denise said, "It's safer with us." "You're always misplacing papers." I smiled, said I'd look. I did look. It wasn't where I keep things, which is not the same as losing them. Now a suitcase was sinking in the water my husband and I used to fish. Like we had all the time in the world. I stood up. My bones cracked their little knuckles. Between the porch and the old dock there's a path of stones my husband laid with a level, and a prayer. I took that path slow, like approaching an animal I wasn't sure would bite. At the dock I could still see it, a dark, stubborn shape sliding toward the bottom. The lake is shallow near shore. Then it drops quick like a sentence that ends as soon. If the suitcase reached that shelf, it would belong to the turtles and the catfish and the Lord. I am not in the mood for this. I told nobody. Then went to the shed. The rowboat is older than half my neighbors. The oars creak like gossip. I've been saving that boat for grandchildren who live far away, and summers we never quite make. I dragged it to the water, grunting and scolding my niece by name. On the third try, the lake accepted me. Out on the water, the fog smelled like wet pennies. Ripples bumped the hull like curious hands. I rowed slow, measuring my breath, keeping my eyes on the spot where the case had gone down. People think courage looks like shouting from mountaintops. Mine looked like a grandmother in a cardigan with a rake tied to a laundry line. I lowered the rake. Nothing, moved to feet. Lowered again, nothing. The third time the rake snagged something that fought back. The line pulled against my palms. The boat tipped in a way I did not appreciate. "Oh no you don't," I told the lake. "I paid too much in copays to drown." I hauled and prayed. Prayed and hauled. Slowly, something gray and slick rose from the water like a secret coming up for air. I wedged the bow against a piling, looped the line, and used both hands. The suitcase breached. Water poured out the zipper like an accusation. I dragged it onto the dock, then sat beside it to let my heart climb down from wherever it had run to up close. It wasn't new. Scratches on the corners. A ribbon tied to the handle for quick spotting on a carousel. Not mine. Not Marcus's, Denise's. I should have called the sheriff then. That would have been the tidy thing. The thing good neighbors recommend. But my life with Denise has never been tidy. I have been the problem in rooms where she was the solution. I have been the extra opinion, the fourth spoon in a drawer that only fits three. If I called the law and the law called back with handcuffs, my son would stand between us and choose the younger woman with the clean kitchen. If I did nothing, I would sit on my porch every morning watching a piece of my family rust underwater. I decided to do the option that let me breathe tonight. No. Getting the suitcase up the path took cunning and a complete disregard for what my physical therapist would advise. I propped it in the shed onto sawhorses so the water could drain, and the truth could think about its behavior. While it dripped, I made tea. The strong kind. I told myself again all the good stories, clothes, books, nothing with a heartbeat. I set a towel on the workbench, found the tin of WD-40, found my glasses, found the courage I keep in the old coffee can with the bolts. The zipper fought like pride. It gave a little, stuck, gave more. The case opened an inch, then two. A smell rose up, lake and mildew and something like perfume from a memory that didn't belong to me. I lifted the lid. On top lay a dress, cream-colored lace, heavy with water and years. Denise's wedding dress, the one she swore she loaned to a friend last spring. When I asked why it wasn't in the cedar closet, I touched the hem. It clung to my fingers like a plea beneath the dress. Plastic folders, the good kind with brass tabs, swollen with water but protected by the Lord or Denise's careful fears. I slid one out. Inside, sealed in zip bags, lay papers, my husband's will, the survey map of the lake property, the deed I couldn't find, and a durable power of attorney form with my name in Denise's handwriting. Where my hands should have been, the air left my body the way a tide leaves the shore, suddenly, and with promises of not returning. I gripped the edge of the bench to keep the world from tilting. There were more. Copies of bank statements from an account I hadn't used in a decade. A life insurance policy with the beneficiary line changed, typed clean as in, receipts, notes. A list titled to do before moving with boxes ticked in blue ink. At the bottom, a final box, make lake problem disappear. I couldn't breathe, for a long time. I didn't move. I just listened to the steady drum of the last drops falling from the lid to the concrete. A clock neither of us could stop. When my lungs remembered their job, I sealed the folders back like a nurse closing a wound and pulled out one last object. Buried at the bottom, a metal lockbox, the portable kind with a handle and a combination I did not know. I shook it gently. Something inside shifted with the soft clink of keys, or jewelry, or truth that likes to shine. I set the box beside the papers and stared at the wedding dress again. Lace heavy as lies. Denise had tried to bury a marriage, a map, and a mother-in-law in one morning. Some people fight with words. Denise fights with arrangements. The house felt too small for my pulse. I locked the shed, tucked a key in the pocket of my apron, and walked back to the porch to sit where the fog had been but wasn't anymore. Across the lake, the water had gone flat and innocent, as if it hadn't swallowed what a woman asked of it. I thought of Marcus at 20, sitting in the stern of that boat with a line in the water and hope on his face. I thought of Denise at my table the night before their wedding, asking if I minded if they served salmon instead of chicken because people expect better now. I thought of the way she had taken my son's hand in the hospital when my husband died and said, "I'll manage everything," and how I had been too tired to argue with the future. I tucked the deed and will into a baking pan lined with towels and slid them into my oven. The only safe I trust. The lockbox I hid under the laundry basket, because nobody ever goes looking for confession under towels. Then I washed my hands twice. Grief has a smell, and I didn't want to bring it to the phone. I called Marcus. It rang 4 times before his voicemail asked me to leave it. I did not. I called again. On the 7th ring he answered breathless. "Hey Mom, everything okay? Come by," I said. "Now?" He hesitated. We're on our way to Denise's fitting." "For what?" I asked, though I already knew the shape of my dread. He swallowed. I heard it through the phone. "New job, new city, new place, We're consolidating things this weekend. I was gonna tell you tonight. I have something that belongs to both of us," I said. "You'll want to see it dry." "Mom, Marcus," I said, using the voice that taught him not to put forks in outlets. "This is not a choice." Silence. Then, soft as a man trying to keep the peace into directions. "Okay." 30 minutes. I hung up. I made more tea because that is what I do when I cannot fix anything. I stood at the sink, staring at the line where the water meets the shore. The fog was gone. The lake had the face of a liar who intends to keep her secret. I walked back to the shed. I opened the case again, laid the dress across an old clothesline, and watched the water leave it in little rivers. I pulled one paper from a bag at random, the power of attorney, and held it to the light. The signature looked like mine if my hand had been guided by a stranger wearing my rings. Denise was moving my life the way she moved furniture, quickly, confidently, certain I would adjust. I pressed my palm flat on the bench until my skin went white around the edges. In that shed with the smell of oil and wet lace and lake water, I made two small vows. I would not let Denise drown what did not belong to her. Whatever was in the lockbox would see daylight before sunset, with or without a combination. A car door slammed out front. Then another. Voices, a laugh I recognized, my son's, a second voice, bright, brisk. The sound of a woman who believes she is right because she is organized. I wiped my hands on my apron, smoothed my hair with the same fingers I used to bless a child, and walked toward the house to open the door. The lake was very quiet. So was I. I opened the door in the morning, stepped back to make room for the truth. Marcus stood there with flowers that still had the price tag on the stem. Denise stood half a step behind him, sunglasses on though the sky was overcast. One hand holding her purse like a verdict. Hey Mom, Marcus said. Voice soft as a spare key. Come in, I told him, and then to her, you too, Denise. We've got a lot of housekeeping today. I led them to the kitchen. The table was already set, 3 cups, the sugar bowl with the hairline crack, a plate of butter cookies nobody ever refuses. I poured tea. Denise stayed standing. You said it was urgent, she began, clipped and careful. We really don't have much time. We never do, I said, sliding the sugar toward my son. That's how trouble gets its work done, Marcus said. Denise didn't. Before we talk, I said. I want to get our terms right. You will not raise your voice in my home. You will not interrupt. And you will not lie. Denise let out a short laugh that did not reach her throat. I don't, Denise, Marcus warned. Without looking at her, she sat. I walked to the oven, eased out the baking pan, and set it on a folded towel. The plastic folders, still damp at the edges, lay inside like fish I didn't remember catching. I placed them on the table one by one, the will, the survey map, the deed, the power of attorney with my name where my hand had not been. Marcus's eyes widened. Denise's didn't. Where did you get those? She asked, steady as a ruler. Same place I got this, I said, lifting the corner of lace I brought in and folded over a chair. Cream, heavy, honest as water. Out of your suitcase, Marcus blinked. Her what? I kept my eyes on Denise. The one you pushed into my lake this morning. For a heartbeat the whole house stopped breathing. Somewhere the refrigerator clicked like it had heard gossip. Outside, a bird changed its mind mid-song. Marcus turned to his wife. Denise? She did not look at him. She looked at me the way people look at a locked door calculating hinges. That's a very dramatic accusation, Lila. It's a very wet suitcase, I said. And these are very dry truths you took a lot of trouble to keep. Marcus lifted the deed, thumb trembling along the edge. Mom, we were just trying to say the rest of that sentence carefully, I told him. He closed his mouth and stared at the paper like it might answer for him. Denise folded her hands. All right, she said. You want the practical version or the sentimental one? I want the honest one, she sighed. You misplaced things. Important things. We needed to keep documents safe while we list the lake property. Your house needs upgrades. Marcus's new job is across the state. This all makes sense on paper if we stop letting feelings drive. She tapped the folders with a manicured nail. We centralized, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it when someone signs my name with a hand that isn't mine? She didn't blink. You gave permission, she said. Maybe you don't remember. I stood there a long moment. Then I walked to the drawer, pulled out my little notebook, the newest one with the gold cover, and flipped to last Thursday. I read out loud. Marcus asked again about the deed. Denise offered to file it for me. I told them I would hold what belongs to me until I feel steady. I do feel steady, Denise's smile tightened. People write all sorts of things to convince themselves. People also write make lake problem disappear on their to-do lists, I said, sliding that soggy sheet across the table with one finger. In blue ink. With boxes checked, Marcus looked at the paper, then at his wife. What is this? Her face changed then, not much. Just enough for me to see the woman who's used to the floor tilting her way. It's not what your mother thinks, she said. What does your mother think? I asked him, keeping my voice kind because I was tired and kindness costs less than rage. He swallowed. I think you tried to. To hide the documents, I think she tried to sink them, I corrected. And if God hadn't given me a stubborn back and an old rake, we'd be having a very different conversation. Marcus put his head in his hands. His shoulders rose like waves. Denise reached to touch him. He flinched before he could stop himself. Marcus, she said, softening, I did this for us. Your mother let sentimental attachments get in the way. She will never sell this place. Never help us move forward. Never, Denise, I said. The last time someone told me I was in the way, I left with just suitcases and my child. I am not moving for your ambitions. I am standing for my own name. I tapped the power of attorney. This is fraud, she tilted her head. It's expedience, no, I said, steady as weather vane iron. It's wrong. And wrong doesn't turn right because you keep a tidy calendar. Marcus lifted his head. His eyes were damp, not with pity for me but with something close to fear for himself. What do we do? He whispered. We start by opening the lockbox, I said, pointing to the gray metal sitting on the counter. And we do it with you watching for the first time. Something like worry passed behind Denise's eyes. There's nothing in there you need to see. That, I said, is how you make me want to see it twice. She pressed her lips thin. It's a personal box, mine. In my suitcase? I asked out silence, then Marcus, barely above a breath. What's the code? She stared at him, her blooming like a bruise. You're asking me that? He didn't look away. What's the code, Denise? She folded her arms. No. Then we'll open it my way, I said. Already at the drawer where I keep the tools men underestimate. I pulled out a flathead and a thin wrench and set them on the counter. The way a woman sets out her Bible and her glasses. I've opened harder things than this with less. Marcus stood quickly. Mom, wait, what? I asked. I'll try the code, he said, hand out. If it's nothing, we put it away. He looked at Denise, voice gentler than I would have offered. Please, she held his gaze for a long, difficult second. Then she said, fine. But I want it on record that this is an invasion. I almost laughed. So, is throwing your mother-in-law's life into a lake? She didn't answer. She watched him instead. Marcus bent over the dial. He tried his birthday. He tried hers. He tried their anniversary. The light moved across his face like time. On the fourth try, I saw the tiny release in his shoulders people have when a door they didn't want to open gives. Wait out, there was a click. He looked at me. I nodded once. He lifted the lid. Inside were two envelopes, a velvet pouch, a thumb drive, and a set of keys on a blue tag with a number written in ink. Unit 317. Denise reached for the box. I placed my hand over the edge and waited for her to remember whose kitchen we were in. Marcus picked up the first envelope. Title draft. He opened it. Inside were copies of a quitclaim deed transferring my lake property to Denise and Marcus Richards. For $1 in love, with a signature line under my printed name. No seal, no witness. Blank where the notary should be? Denise had done her homework. She just hadn't had time to finish the test. He opened the second envelope. Care plan transition. My son read in silence while the color left his face. He handed it to me. It was a checklist, typed clean. In-home assessment, facility tours, transport arrangements, scripted talking points for difficult conversations. At the bottom, a date circled for final move. 3 weeks from Sunday, out-of-state placement recommended. I read. Well now, Marcus's voice broke. Denise, you said we were helping her. You said, I am helping, she snapped, the polish finally chipping off her tone. She falls. She loses things. She keeps this place like a shrine. We can't build a future with a stubborn past chained to our ankles. The lake is wasted on a woman who only uses it to remember. Denise, I said. This lake buried my husband's ashes and raised my son. It held your wedding dress this morning and gave it back to me by lunch. It knows what waste looks like, and it's not a grandmother watching ducks. She rolled her eyes. You turn everything into poetry, Lila. Bankers don't care about poems, neither do cops. I said softly, tapping the forged form. But they care about this. She still. Marcus picked up the velvet pouch. He opened it. Inside lay my mother's locket, the one that went missing last spring, along with my house key, a spare checkbook, and a little gold key I hadn't seen since my husband died. The key to his gun safe. Denise found her smile again. The pretty one she uses for people who seat her near the kitchen. See, I was safekeeping things. You were safekeeping me into silence, I said. He set the pouch down like it might burn. He held up the thumb drive. What's this? Denise lifted her chin. Backups, scans, nothing dramatic. And the keys? He asked, holding out the blue tag. Storage, she said. So we don't have to argue every time we need a box. What's in the storage, Denise? I asked. My life, or yours? Both, she said, not even pretending anymore. We stood there in the three-person quiet that happens when each of you is holding a different truth. Like it's a newborn, I put the thumb drive back in the box. I closed the locket with a click that sounded like a period. Then I folded my hands and looked at my son. Here's what's going to happen, I said. And my voice didn't shake. You and I are going to the bank after lunch. We will freeze any account with my name that I didn't open. We will revoke any power of attorney I didn't sign in ink. In front of a notary who knows my face and my hand, I turned to Denise. You will return anything of mine you have placed in storage. Every item. Piece by piece. If I have to pay for a locksmith, I will. If I have to ask a deputy to watch, I will. We will inventory, and we will sign for it. She opened her mouth. I held up a finger. She closed it. Then, I said, we will take this deed, this survey map, and this will to my lawyer. And we will place the lake and the house in a trust with terms I set. Not the terms your timelines prefer. After that, Denise, you will no longer speak to me about money. You may speak to me about the weather, the garden, and your mother's chili recipe I pretend to enjoy. Marcus made us sound like a laugh and a prayer tangled together. And if you refuse? I asked the air between us, though it was meant for her. Denise's eyes hardened. You wouldn't call the police on your own family. I would call the truth, I said. And let it pick the number. For the first time, she looked unsure. Not beaten, just aware that the room had lost its talent for tilting in her favor. Marcus reached across the table, placed his hand over mine. We'll do it, Mom, he said. We'll do all of it. She turned on him. Marcus, think I am, he said, and I felt the boy I raised and the man I'd been missing. I'm thinking about how I became a husband who lets his wife throw my mother's life into a lake and calls it help. Denise stood so quickly her chair scraped the tile. If you walk out of here with her, you'll regret it. We have a plan. We have deadlines. My firm expects I expect a son, I said. Not a project manager. That did it. Her face shuddered. She picked up her purse. You always wanted him to choose you, she said. Congratulations, I shook my head. No. I wanted him to choose right. She moved toward the door, then turned back, eyes icy and bright. For what it's worth, Lila, I never meant to hurt you. I meant to improve things. Some people plant roses, I said. Some people pave them. The door closed behind her with the soft thud of something breaking and pretending it didn't. Marcus stared at the wood for a long time. Then he sat again, face in his hands. I don't know how to fix this. You don't, I said. You live it right. That's the only way. I nudged the lockbox toward him. Eat a cookie. We've got a bank to visit. He laughed through his nose and did as he was told. Before we left, I went out to the shed one more time. I took the wedding dress off the line. It was still damp, heavy with all it had carried. I folded it into an old laundry basket and covered it with towels like a secret. That wasn't mine to keep. On our way to the car, we passed the lake. The surface was flat as a promise. I stopped and looked at my reflection. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a woman who had finally decided which part of the story belonged to her mom. Marcus said softly, Yes, baby, I'm sorry, I know, I said. Keep being sorry with your feet. He opened the passenger door for me. Mercy, my cane, leaned against the seat like it knew the route. We drove to the bank without the radio, each of us listening to the sound a life makes when it starts to turn the right way. On the way back, we stopped at a little storage place by the highway, the kind with orange doors and secrets that pay rent. The blue tag fit Unit 317 like it had been waiting for us. Inside were boxes labeled in Denise's neat hand, Linen Zal, Books Attic, PHOTOS sort. Winter Donate, My Life, stacked shoulder high, alphabetized into a future I hadn't agreed to. Dot in the back corner, covered with a moving blanket, sat something taller, the old cedar chest my husband bought me the year our boy turned 5. I opened it with the little gold key from the pouch. The scent of cedar rose like a hymn. Inside, folded on top, lay a quilt I thought I'd lost my mother's hands in every square. Under it, a small wooden box I didn't recognize. I lifted the lid. Letters. 30 years of them. Some to me, some from me, some unsent. Tied with ribbon. Tied with years I thought were gone. Denise had been packing up my history like winter clothes. I took the letters and the quilt. I left the rest for a day, when my heart didn't feel like it had run a marathon without shoes. Back home, the sky had changed its mind about the sun. The lake kept its secrets, but mine had found their way to the table where they belonged. That evening, Rosa stopped by after her shift with a loaf of bread and a kind of silence that invites truth. She listened. She hugged me in a way that pinned all my broken pieces exactly where they belonged. You did good, she said. You didn't shout. You didn't shrink. You just stood. I'm tired, I admitted. Rest, she said. The next right thing will still be there in the morning, before bed. I opened my notebook and wrote, You can throw a suitcase into the lake, but the water knows what's heavy. It returns what floats, paper, lace, truth. Then I turned out the light. Tomorrow would be for lawyers and locks and lists. Tonight was for a woman who had pulled her life out of the water and laid it in the sun. The next morning, the phone woke me before the robins did. Mrs. Carter. A man's voice said, gentle but official. This is Tom from the bank. We've completed the freezes you requested and updated the signature cards. Also, there were 2 attempts to access your account last night from a mobile device. Both declined. Thank you, I said. Let the account rest. It's been through enough, he chuckled softly. Yes, ma'am. When I hung up, another call came right behind it. A woman this time, brisk, Adult Protective Services. We received a report expressing concern about your capacity and household safety. I'd like to schedule a visit today, if possible. I looked out at the lake. It was calm as a closed eye. Come on, I said. I'll make coffee. Rose arrived before the knock. Like she always does when trouble forgets its manners. She set a loaf of banana bread on the counter and kissed my cheek. You okay? They sent the state, I said. She sucked her teeth. Let them see what a list looks like. The APS worker was young. Kind eyes, clipboard. She sat at my table and asked good questions. Could I name the date? My doctor, my medicines? Could I show her where I kept them? I did. Could I walk without falling? I stood with Mercy my cane and crossed the room like a woman who had practiced dignity more than once. She asked about bills. I pulled a folder from the drawer. Nita's church. She asked who helped me. I pointed to the names on the fridge: Ruth, Rosa, Deacon Hill, my doctor, my lawn boy, my lawyer Miss Howard, whose card sat on the counter like a little square of armor. Do you feel safe? She asked finally. I looked up my lists, my kettle, my window, my lake. Yes, I said. I feel awake. She nodded, stood, and softened her voice. Sometimes people file reports because they're worried. Sometimes they file them because they're losing an argument. I smiled. I can tell the difference. Can you? She smiled back. I can. I'll note no concerns. She paused at the door. You remind me of my grandmother. She used to say, some folks call it stubborn. I call it a spine. Your grandmother raised you right, I said. When she left, I exhaled the breath I didn't know I was holding. Rosa put a mug in my hand and squeezed my shoulder. At 10, Marcus pulled into the drive. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red in that way a man's eyes get when the truth keeps him up and won't give him a pillow. She called APS, he said. Not asking, they came, I said. They met my list and left with a muffin. He laughed without joy. I stayed at a motel. I couldn't be in the house last night. Every drawer I opened felt like a demand. Then you did right, I said. We drove to Miss Howard's office, a room full of books that looked red, and a woman who wore her hair close and her gaze closer. She did not waste my time. You did well to freeze, she said, tapping the papers I laid down. We'll record an affidavit about the attempted power of attorney, notify the title office, and create a trust for the lake in your home with you as trustee. We'll name a successor you choose. I recommend someone who won't be charmed by convenience. Rosa, I said. Rosa nearly spit out her tea. Ms. Howard smiled. Perfect. And Denise? Marcus asked, knuckles white around the arm of the chair. Ms. Howard folded her hands. You have options. We can press criminal charges for the forged POA and attempted deed transfer. We can also send a civil demand letter and file a protective order if she persists. The question is, what outcome do you want? I stared at a spot on the wall where the paint was just a shade different, like the room had been patched, and chose not to brag. I want my name back, I said. And my peace. If we can get both without jail bars, I'd like to try. If not, I will not let fear set my price. Miss Howard nodded. Then we'll start with the letter and the trust. If she breathes on your assets, we breathe back harder. We signed. We notarized. We made copies. We left with a folder that felt heavier than paper. On the way out, Miss Howard touched my arm. You did not deserve what was done to you, she said. But you were handling it better than most. Practice, I said. Life gives you plenty. Back at home, a text lit my phone. Denise. Denise, I hope you enjoyed your performance this morning. You've made things harder than they needed to be. I will be moving forward with our plan for the property. Marcus understands we have deadlines. Me. The plan has changed. There will be no sale. Denise, you cannot stop progress. Lila. Me. I can protect my name. Consider this my only reply. All further communication will go through counsel. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. By afternoon, a deputy from the sheriff's office met us at the storage facility, clipboard in hand. Denise was already there, arms crossed, hair perfect, a smile with edges. We're here to retrieve my property, I told the deputy. Every item marked with my name, every album, box, and book. Anything else we dispute, we will list and sort in daylight with a witness. Denise handed over a key like she was paying a parking ticket. Let's be done, we inventoried. The deputy checked boxes. I opened lids. Marcus carried. The albums were there our summers, our birthdays. The year my husband taught our boy to float on his back in this very lake. My mother's Bible. My recipe cards, the handwriting of for women who could feed a town from a single pot. There were things not mine to Denise's files, her winter coats. A framed certificate from her firm that thought speed was a virtue. At the back, under a sheet. The cedar chest waited. I opened it and took the quilt, the letters. The deputy watched my face go soft. You good, Mum? He asked. I am now, I said. When we finished, the deputy had Denise sign the inventory. She scrawled fast, then turned to Marcus. You really going to do this? Throw your life at your mother's feet? My life was always at her feet, he said, not unkindly. I just forgot to look down. She stared at him, jaw tight, then at me. You win today. I met her eyes. There isn't a scoreboard, Denise. There's a line. You crossed it. She left without slamming the door. That's how you know a person is still calculating. For a week, the house was a harbor. Marcus slept on the couch. He fixed the back step I'd been ignoring, replaced a bulb over the sink, trimmed the hedge. Every chore was an apology done with hands. At night, he sat by the lake as if it might take his shame like it had taken the suitcase. It didn't. That's not water's job. Denise sent one last letter through. Ms. Howard, full of words like efficiency and necessary in transition. Ms. Howard sent one back with words like seize and return and fraud. I did not reply to either. I baked a peach cobbler for the church picnic instead, and watched children steal the last scoop with spoons, while their mothers pretended not to see. On Sunday, Ruth came by with her blunt love and her sharp tongue. She hugged Marcus like she was checking if he was real. Are you staying or playing house? Staying to help, he said. Good, she replied. Help knows where the broom is. That evening, I took the wedding dress from the laundry basket, washed it gentle in the tub with the good soap, and hung it on the clothesline. The lace glowed in the late sun, clean now, heavy still. I carried a chair to the yard and sat with it like an old friend. The breeze moved the hem. It looked like a woman breathing. I thought about Denise on her wedding day, how she had stood stiff as a statue, and still found a way to be beautiful. I had prayed for her then. I pray for her now. When the dress was dry, I laid it in a plain box lined with tissue. I wrote a note and slipped it on top. Denise, some things belong to the water. This isn't one of them. Lila set the box on my porch and texted her on the step. Pick up before dusk. I will not be here to talk. She came quick, engine idling like a heartbeat. She didn't look toward the window. She lifted the box, hesitated, and then, for the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Not weak, just human without the armor. She drove away without a word that night. Marcus stood in the doorway. She's going to her sister's, he said. She said she needs time to think. Let her, I said. Time is an honest teacher. He leaned against the frame. I don't know if we'll make it, you might, I said. If you both learn something worth keeping, and if we don't, then learn something anyway, I said. Don't waste pain, he nodded. We were quiet a while. The frogs tuned up in the ditch by the road like a choir that never learned to read music. And didn't need to, Mom? Yes, baby, am I a good man? You're trying to be, I said. That's the only kind I trust. He came to the table then and took my hands. Thank you for pulling it out of the lake, the suitcase. Me? He said. I laughed once, soft. You threw yourself in long before Denise threw that case. I just reminded you could swim. We sat there until the kettle clicked. I poured tea, and we shared the last cookie in half. That's how forgiveness works in a kitchen. A few days later, Ms. Howard called. Trust recorded, she said. Deed secured. Bank and title companies flagged. If anyone tries to move sand under your feet, we'll feel it. Thank you, I said. Also, she added, voice lighter. Your line about water and weight, that's going in my pocket for later, take it, I told her. There's plenty. That evening, I walked down to the dock with Mercy and the letters from the cedar chest. I opened the top one, my husband's hand, young and certain, telling me he loved the way I laughed when fish stole his bait. I cried a little, the kind that cleans and doesn't drown. Then I spoke out loud to the lake because it knows how to keep a confidence. You can stop holding your breath now, I told it. So can I. On my way back up the path, I passed the place where the suitcase had gone under. Dragonflies skated on the surface like green sparks. The water looked simple. It wasn't, neither am I. Inside. I opened my notebook and wrote. They threw the wrong thing into the lake. It wasn't the papers that needed drowning, it was the lie that I was easy to move. I closed the book and smiled at the quiet. It fit me again. In the weeks that followed, the house learned a new rhythm. Marcus found a small apartment nearby. He came by mornings before work to check the porch and sit a minute. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. He fixed what was loose. I cooked what was on sale. Some evenings he'd stand at the lake and skip stones until the circles overlapped and faded. Denise sent one last message through council: no charges. No contact for now. An address for the box key she still had in her purse. Ms. Howard returned a receipt and a blessing. Do better. I added nothing. Some silences teach more than sentences. One Sunday, I brought the quilt from the cedar chest to church and let the children sit on it during the song. Their feet scoffed the squares my mother stitched from dresses and aprons, and one old shirt my husband loved. It felt right. History under joy. On the walk home, the lake was bright as a coin. I stopped on the dock and listened to the soft slap of water on wood. I remembered the weight of that suitcase, the way it tried to pull me in, the way my arms burned and still refused to let go. Some things you don't let go. Some things you do. I let the breeze have my hair and the sun have my face. Then I went inside to make a list for tomorrow. Not because I was afraid I'd forget, because I like the feeling of crossing things off. At the top I wrote, breathe. Call Miss Howard, thank her again. Make lemon bars for Rosa. Put the deed in the safe. Watch the water. It tells the truth slow, but it tells it asterisk by the time the trees let go of their leaves. The house had learned a quieter rhythm. Marcus had his little apartment 10 minutes away and a toolbox that stayed in my mudroom. Like a promise. Rosa fussed through the door with soup when the wind acted ugly. Miss Howard called once a month to say, "All is steady," and I would answer, "So am I." I kept the D where it belonged. I kept my peace where I could reach it. Some mornings I even forgot to check the window first thing. And that felt like progress. It was a Sunday in sunlight. A breeze tossing the last of the pecan leaves when I saw her again, Denise. She parked to the shoulder where the gravel gives up. The same place she'd stood with that suitcase. No sunglasses this time, no hurry. Just a woman holding her own hands like she finally knew what they were capable of. I set my cup down, picked up Mercy, and met her halfway down the path. "Lila," she said, "Denise." We stood there between the yard and the lake, where the ground is honest about being both. She looked smaller. Not broken, just tired from wrestling the mirror. "I brought some things," she said, lifting a plain envelope. "And I came to say, I'm sorry." Her voice didn't reach for sympathy. It sat where it belonged. I nodded at the envelope. "What's in there?" "Keys, the last of them. Copies of files. We took your files, so you know there's nothing else hiding in drawers." I shouldn't have opened. A faint smile. "The storage unit's empty." "I left the receipt in there, too, and the dress?" I asked. She glanced toward the porch, where it had once rested in a box. "I had it cleaned again," she said. "I put it in the closet at home and stood there a long time. Thought about throwing it away. Thought about keeping it. Ended up folding it for my sister's girl. If she ever asks where it came from, I'll tell her the truth. All of it." We listened to the wind comb the grass. Somewhere out on the water a turtle surfaced, considered us, and sank again. The lake is patient with people. We are slower learning to be patient with ourselves. "I won't press charges," I said. "Unless you give me a reason to regret that sentence. I won't let you near my papers again. I won't sell you the lake. And I won't spend the rest of my days speaking badly of you to a man who has to figure out his life without a referee." She blinked fast. "I don't deserve that kindness." "It's not kindness," I said. "It's policy. Forgiveness is a gift. Access is a policy." She almost laughed. "You always were more organized than you looked, for the record," I said. "You're not the villain in my story. You're just not the author." She had the sense to let that sit. "Marcus?" I asked. "We're talking," she said. "Or trying. I moved in with my sister while we figure out if the voices in our marriage are our own, or just our parents echoing." She swallowed. "The way people do when the truth is wider than their throat. I was raised to believe survival meant control. Lists, calendars, contingencies. I thought if I could put everything where I wanted it, nothing could leave me. And then it did." I said. She nodded. "And then it did." We stood there longer than strangers stand and shorter than friends do. The sky brightened a little. As if impressed we'd made it this far without throwing anything but sentences. "I've got tea," I said finally. "And lemon bars if Rosa hasn't found them." She shook her head. "I shouldn't stay." "Suit yourself," I said. "But I'll walk to the dock." We went down together. Mercy ticking against the boards like a metronome for breathing. Denise leaned on the rail. "I thought water would hide what I couldn't face," she said quietly. "Water tells the truth slow," I answered. "But it tells it." She looked out across the surface, where the light made little coins and the wind spent them. "Do you hate me, Lila?" "No," I said. "I don't keep that in my pantry. Takes up too much shelf space." Her laugh this time was real, if small. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" "I think you're a person," I said. "Some days that's harder than being good or bad." We watched a pair of boys on bikes rattle past on the road, all knees and air. Somewhere a dog argued with a squirrel. The world did what it always does when people think they've broken it. It went on. "I made a list," she said after a while, almost shy. "Not for you. For me." She pulled a folded paper from her coat and read as if to remind herself the ink was dry. "Call therapist. Tell Marcus every fear without blaming. Apologize to Lila again if needed. Take hands off what isn't mine. Learn the difference between protection and control. That last one keeps most folks busy for life." I said. "I know." She tucked the paper away. "I'll leave you be," she said, handing me the envelope. "Thank you for not burning me down." "Don't give me the match," I said. But I took the envelope and meant the truce. She turned to go, then stopped. "Marcus told me about your little sayings. He says you keep them in a notebook." "I keep me in a notebook," I said. "The sayings come along for the ride." She nodded, then surprised me. "Could you write one for me? Not to frame or post. Just something to carry when the part of me that likes to drag suitcases starts talking loud." I thought about it. About mercy that isn't soft, boundaries that aren't walls, and how the lake had taught us both to pay attention. I said, "Tell that part of you. You don't have to own every room to belong in it. Then tell it to sit down and sip its tea. She smiled, a little crooked. I can try that. You can, I said. Trying is where most of the miracles live. We walked back up the path without ceremony. No hug, no handshake. Just two women who had finally learned which parts of the story were theirs to carry. At the top, she lifted her chin in a small salute and headed for the car. Denise, I called. She turned. Next time you need to throw something heavy, I said. Try a habit. I'll start with that one. She answered, and for once I believed her. When she drove away, the road kept her dust like a secret. I stood there feeling the weight of the envelope in my palm, keys, copies. Proof that some endings are just the quiet you earn after choosing the right door. Marcus came by near dusk. He took in the way I was standing and did not ask a dozen questions. She came, he said. She did, he waited. I kept the lake, I said. I kept my peace. She kept her lesson, I hope. He let out the breath he'd been holding since spring. Thank you. For what? For not making me choose a side when the only right choice was to stand in the middle and listen. You're learning, I said. Keep going. We ate supper by the window, beans and cornbread, nothing fancy, everything enough. After he left, I washed the 2 plates by hand because the rhythm calms me. Water, soap, rinse, stack. Mercy leaned against the counter like an old friend who enjoys the quiet. Before bed, I opened my notebook, the one with the red ribbon. I wrote slow so the words would land where they needed to. He didn't find the woman he left. He found the woman the water raised. I forgave the person. I kept the deed. Forgiveness is free. Trust is leased, renewable, reviewed often, cancelled on breach. I set down my pen and listened to the house settle with speaking to nail, glass to frame, breath to bone. Outside, the lake kept its small night noises, the kind that say, you are not alone, not now. Not ever, not here. I turned off the lamp and lay back. The envelope with the last keys resting in the drawer where the tea towels live. No locks to change tonight. No papers to hide in the oven. No suitcases in the dark. Just a quiet woman, a steady house. And water that had taught us both how to stop pretending we were sinking. In the morning, I would take lemon bars to Rosa and cut a slice for the mailman. I would sit on the porch with my coffee and my list. And if the road stayed empty and the lake kept its easy face, I would not go looking for trouble. But if it came, I'd be ready with mercy with my notebook, with a spine that other people call stubborn. I closed my eyes and slept like someone who had finally remembered her own name.